Hi, my name is Luke. I've been going to Encounter Church for about 7 years since meeting my wife. I grew up as a pastor's kid. I can't even remember a time where I did not learn about the faith. I remember walking with my dad in the center aisle when he would walk down getting ready to greet people in the back of the church when I used to live in this town called Ulysses, Pennsylvania. I've moved about 15 plus times in my life. My dad was a bit of an evangelist and we, moved around quite a bit. Despite having a father for a pastor, as you can imagine, it doesn't necessarily mean that I believed everything as naturally as maybe you would think. I would say that I had all the head knowledge that I could have possibly desired as far as when it came to my belief in God. But as far as an internal spiritual connection, that wasn't something that I really took seriously until much later. I remember being baptized once in Oklahoma because I was upset that I couldn't take communion at that church unless you were baptized. But then later on, when I was about 16, 17, I ended up getting baptized again because I didn't think I meant it as much at 8 years old. So I wanted to take it more seriously and show and profess my faith in a way that was more demonstrable for being somebody as a young adult. That is not to say that I ended up taking things as seriously as maybe I do now. When I was a child, I acted like a child, and when I was an adult, I act more like an adult that's semi-child. It all kind of came to a head for me in about 2013. I ended up having a son that I didn't get to meet until he was about 8 years old, about 9 years later, after knowing about him. It was a messy, complicated situation, and I moved to Florida pretty much just to kind of start fresh because I didn't want to complicate things where I was. Eventually I met my wife, Danielle, who's amazing and just a steadfast person for me. And she always, to me, had a stronger sense of faith, maybe than myself, or maybe something that felt more grounded. So when we started coming to Encounter, I immediately was kind of standoffish just because I've got my own preconceptions about church. I've got my own ideas of what pastors are genuine, which worship leaders are showy, which ones are, egotistical and all about putting on a performance. And slowly but surely, through inviting somebody else to church, I ended up getting more involved with Encounter. And that changed a lot of my perspective. But after I met my son, that was a big wake-up call for me because there was a lot that was unsaid and undone. And I didn't always know how to process that. I didn't know how to reconcile with a life that I thought and believed that I had lost. And it was a torturous 1.5-year experience where I basically cried myself to sleep every single night, just wishing that I had a family that I could no longer attain. Just forgetting where I was and who I was with. But over time, I knew that I couldn't continue in the misery and agony that I was experiencing, and I decided that enough was enough and that I wanted to make stronger strides towards my relationship with my wife and eventually my relationship with God. Not 2 months ago, I got a text from my aunt that was asking if my cousin Jada could send me a message. I haven't talked to my cousin Jada in 5 years, and she's 19, and we don't really know each other very well. And I said yes, hesitantly but curiously, and I got an email from her with an 18-minute long voice message, which was specifically for me. And I was at work at the time. I'm a software engineer, I work from home, but I had a moment that I could kind of listen to it, and I started it, and she explained, hey, I know it's been a while, but I was praying this morning, and you were on my mind and my heart, and I just wanted to tell you a word from God, if I could. So she began to prophesy over me and tell me that I was being called to worship in some way. I don't know the extent. She certainly gave an interesting description of it. She said she wanted me to soothe the people like David did for Saul with his lyre, trying to put people at ease for difficult times that could be ahead. And at that moment, I texted my worship leader and said, put me on every single week that you can from now on going forward. After I was done listening to the message, I called her, and she was nervous. She thought, this guy's 32, I'm 19, is he gonna be upset with me? I'm not trying to condemn him or anything like that. And she repeatedly said that, even in her audio message. And I was just so grateful, because she also spoke into a period of a dark, shadowy time for me, when I was living in the shadows, and that God was calling me out of it, and that he was ready to heal me. And that's exactly what I experienced. I've dealt with depression, anxiety, a crippling sense of self-worth for my entire life. When I was 4 years old, I told my mom, apparently, that I hated myself. And that was kind of something that I believed for my entire life. But as soon as I got off that phone with my cousin, and I talked to her for a couple more weeks after that, and I still talk to her now, I noticed that I wasn't depressed anymore. I wasn't so self-critical anymore. And God truly did call me to just stop, just with all of my pain, that all of it was for a purpose. So now I'm glad that I suffered. I'm glad that I had a life where I couldn't really connect with that many people, but I tried to make friends with everyone for all the moving that I made. I'm glad that I suffered and that I had the opportunity to grow in the way that I did. Because if I didn't, I don't think I would be the person that I am today. And for all the things that I could blame in my past, for all the things that I could bring up and say why I'm as bad as I am, why I'm not as good as I could be, all I look forward to now is where I'm going and who he's making me to be. I'm going to be involved in worship as a worship leader, songwriter, anything from this point on in my life. And it was that encounter and that healing with God that made me truly believe in him, because he promised me that he would listen to me, that he would anoint me for it, that he would bring me up, and that he would protect my family. I lost my job 3 weeks ago, and I've just been nervous ever since. But I have a complete faith that I'm going to find a job very soon, because I have been praying to the Father every single day, and I know that he takes care of his own. I know that he will take care of me, my family, no matter what shadow or valley that I go through. I know that he's with me. For the first time in my life, I truly believe it. I don't think there's anything that I could have learned that would make me believe in God. I just know his love. That's enough for me.